you going, my friend? Are you well?
All right, and you, man. All right, and you.
I am living the dream, as we were talking about just before we jumped on. Stan, thanks for making the time. I have so many things to ask you. Unfortunately, we've only got 7 hours. I don't think it's going to be long enough to get through everything. You okay for that?
That's all right. That's all right. Just hold on. I'll just get my sleeping
bag. Along the journey of Thunder Labs, you've said many things to me. I mean, you're familiar with our project services, our cyber services. You know what we do. But as a leader, you've impacted me. It's not only just the fact that you're a customer of ours, but it's this thing that you said to me. Momentum is a leader's best friend, and I want to say that it's charged my mind with a way of being around our business that has really, it's become a bit of a war cry for me. Momentum is a leader's best friend. I wanted to understand what you observe of that. Why did you choose that? Like, what is it about that really resonates for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's not my ingenuity. It's just something I learned from a lot of really learned leaders over time, and it was quite interesting over time when you learn a lot about leadership, right? And you're trying to find, how do I become a better leader? How do I lead myself? And really, what does that mean when in a working environment? And it was just really interesting as I've seen how businesses function, as well as how true leadership really makes those businesses really grow and what I learned over time was that three big things that make a big difference to leaders. One, how do we make sure that we are building the trusting environment and psychological safe environment so people come to work and they're happy? And two, how do we deliver results? And then three, how do we invest in these individuals, or invest in the talent? But what the message that I kept on getting as we were going through that was, once you've built that trust, the best way to take that further was building momentum, and in all aspects of life. So building momentum, whether you're learning, building momentum, whether you're building, and we're delivering. It just, as you become a catalyst to start something new and start to build that momentum gets built as that new idea or that new concept is starting to mature. As the momentum's to build and you stabilize the momentum, I think it just takes off. Okay, and we do that through people, right? And allowing them to be catalysts and build momentum while you guide them, while you shepherd them. If I try to use that word rather than how do we shepherd them from the side or from behind, in terms of making sure as they build momentum, they're growing and they start to, and you then direct them in the right direction as they may slip and fall. But that momentum means that these things are becoming repetitive, right? And I think if anybody talks about, doesn't matter what you do in work, in life, everything we do is as we get into that rhythm, whether I'm in a cadence, whether I'm in delivery, my life is all about delivery right now. Every time I get into a process of getting something repetitive and moving in at a pace, you can step away and let it go without you having to worry about it, because it's going. And that momentum, and why is that the best friend for a leader? Is because I don't have to worry about it that much anymore, and I can focus on the next thing and be the catalyst to get the next thing going. So it really has resonated with me in my life, and an example of that is I talk to when people are struggling. I always talk to them and say, the hardest part is not, I don't see you struggling delivering, I see you struggling starting. Okay, so how do I help you start? Okay, and get you to a level of momentum, and then you can continue. And so that's become a bit of a mantra for me, being the catalyst to start something, get to a level of momentum, and then letting people run.
I really love that, actually. I'm going to come back to the struggling starting versus struggling delivering, because you just made something. I'm just going to replay what I heard. Creating environments of psychological safety. Actually, I'm going to go back another level. building momentum is a leader's best friend. I mean, that's okay as a motto, but there's techniques behind it, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
the techniques I'm hearing behind it are an environment of psychological safety, building trust with the respective people that you want to work with. Build momentum through ideas, but you do that by establishing repetition as fast as possible, so you can then create the role of shepherding as opposed to doing everything. There is a thought that I need to come back to about just starting and what you start with, but we'll come to that because I want to come back to this concept first. I don't see you struggling to deliver. I see you struggling to start. I'm, man, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I'm blown away by that. Whether it's in scale ups like my business or in enterprises, I don't know what it is, but people just seem so reticent to make the decision, or maybe afraid for standing out, or something. Like there's something in people. Maybe it's a human condition that very few are afraid to start. They'll start where they start with somebody else, but to start on their own and be the, responsible. Not even responsible. I can't even find the right words for this, but I
Yeah.
have this with my guys all the time. I mean, we're lucky. We've got a team of entrepreneurial techs, right? So that's one thing. But I find other aspects of the business that much more challenging. I mean, like, what do you think that is about behaviorally? Why do people struggle to start?
Everybody is different, right? And I think the big thing we learn about when we talk about psychological safety, trust, and everything, that every human being is different. So there are a lot of reasons, but I suppose it comes to a few things. One is fear, and one is risk averse. And these are the things that people say, I'm not quite sure that this is the right thing to do, or what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if they don't like what I do? There's a lot of so it's fear, risk, and all these things of what happens if. And I think depending where you are and what you're doing, a lot of environments are going to be more risk averse than they're going to be risk takers, and that's just the nature of the beast. As an organization grows and as technology gets more sophisticated, people are scared, right? So, and they're scared to take that risk, and they're scared to lose something. And some people aren't. Okay, all right. And I think that's called the difference. I think why people are. There is another piece that I sometimes don't think people know how to start.
How should they start? If they're either, we all need to start. So let's just assume, whatever the environment, they're afraid, or there's fear, sorry, I should say, or risk aversion, or there is a complicated technology environment. If people have initiatives, they need to, we all have to start. All organizers have to start, otherwise you're going backwards out the door, right? How do they start?
Yeah, and this is where Thunder Labs is really good.
Thank you.
Okay. Find the one piece that's the right place to go. And I think we all think about the North Star and how to get to the North Star and how to make sure that we can achieve the North Star, debate the North Star. And I'm saying this over and over again for a reason. We talk about the North Star for a few weeks, then another few months, and then we come back and look at something else. And I'm going this, and I'm being monotonous in my voice, is being monotonous because I'm trying to prove a point. Is that we just talk about how we're going to get to this wonderful place that we're going to go to, but we just don't take that first step. And it's because I don't think a lot of organizations or a lot of people in it, they understand how to ask the right question to get to the right one thing I just need to do to walk out the door and take the first step. I know you guys, that's part of your mantra in terms of what you guys try to do, but also, I mean, it's something very common actually in the industry, in which Toyota introduced into their place called Toyota Carter, which was all about know where you are today, know where you want to be, and look for your first thing that you want to achieve, and then start working your way towards it, and take the first step, right? And that first step may be, and usually your first few steps are not risky. Okay, they're simple, right? So you take a first step, you're starting to build momentum. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
as you're starting to build that momentum, people start to feel this, that fear starts going away. I start to get more confident. Well, hold on, I've delivered the first two things, and they may be simple, or if they may be nothing, but it just gives an individual, or gives a team some sort of confidence. Okay, we are going in the right direction. And also, when you do small things to start, you if you make a mistake, it's easy to redirect. It's easy to pivot into a direction that makes sense, or to fix the problem. So find the right, break things down to a small piece, and then start to move to the next simple space, or simple milestone, and then work on from there. And then for me, I think that's where people struggle with.
What was the Toyota tool you mentioned? Toyota.
It's called Toyota Carter.
Toyota Carter.
Yeah. So it's and they did an analysis of it. I forget the gentleman's name who did the analysis, wrote a book, okay, and spoke about Toyota and what they do in it was a very long time ago. I'm assuming they still use it, but it became a motto inside the organization. Just what's the best way to move forward, and it becomes I suppose it becomes a in-bed thing that you do normally. And I think that's where I've got to the point in my life, is every time somebody says I've got to do a whole lot of things, I ask a whole lot of questions before I even take the first step. And those questions are just trying to get down to the smallest piece that needs change.
I mean, it really makes sense. You're actually triggering. I was just looking up, and I have a second screen here to trigger myself of things I was reading, and I read something about running tactical missions, not running visions, or having a vision but running tactical missions. And the way it was articulated is like the first thing you need to deliver is the first peak that you need to climb of many peaks to get to the North Star. And interesting enough, even though they use peaks, they use a North Star still. It's interesting, but it kind of makes sense. I think it's just deciding which that first peak is to navigate, and then making sure you've got just enough of the right people. You're carrying just enough to make that peak before you decide on the next peak, right?
And I really like the point that you just made too, and I also try to use it. And in fact, I talk about a lot, just enough, and that's the key thing. It's probably the other piece that people don't get right as well. So let's assume they've got to the point where they know the first step. They spend what they spend trying to work out how to get to the next step often is over engineering that it's all about just enough. What do we need? Just enough just to get there, because by getting there you're learning more than actually by working out all the millions of things that you may want to do afterwards. So you learn so much in that time. So yeah, I think that balance between just enough and knowing what your first step is classic.
I was at a talk at lunchtime, and one of the speakers said it costs so much to work out what your costs are that no one's spending those costs on working out what the benefits are. They're spending the costs on the costs. And I was like, well, it's this conundrum that I'm trying to work through.
I love it.
Yeah, but it's true, right?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great comment. But we spend so much time working on what we need to do and how much it's going to cost us, and we just never get going. And you're right. We never focus on the benefits enough.
Yeah,
100%.
I really mean this, and please don't take it as a platitude. I sometimes find myself stuck. I'm like, I've got 4 divisions, I've got people and money and all the normal problems of running a business, and your words pop into my head, and it goes like this: just move, McGowan, just move. And even today is an example. I'm grateful that you've chosen to do it this way, because we were supposed to be in a podcast studio. I'm sick, but so thank you. But just moving and having this conversation, I think is an example. And I know it's imperfect, but I know we'll get to outcomes through this. So again, just momentum and moving come to mind. And I don't think momentum is the same as movement. I acknowledge that distinction, but movement is momentum, I think. Anyway, it's a long thought that I'm having on those particular topics, because it's it's important to me.
Yeah.
We talked about. I'm just going to go back from my note here, and it's a point you just raised on risk, complicated environments. I'm interested in how do you find a balance between risk and experimentation? If,
Yeah.
and what I mean is you're in an environment you perceive to be risky or complicated, but you know you need to experiment, but that can be hard sometimes, and so there is a balance that needs to be struck. Um, how do you strike that balance?
And here's the strange issue. It's the same approach. Okay. Break down the risk into a small piece. So again, and I find this quite a lot of working at Cochlear, is that the risk is really big, but if you break that risk down into smaller pieces, it allows us to innovate in different areas or innovate in a way that allows us to avoid or mitigate a certain amount of risks. And that's the conversation we keep on having. It's a conversation at Cochlear that we're having quite a lot of, which is what is risky to the business and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break it down to the basics of what's going to impact my organization and how it will impact the organization, you'll find that on a lot of occasions, you will identify a big part of that risk is actually very small in terms of risk. So you can break it down into pieces, start to innovate in areas that aren't going to impact a potential risk. But on the other hand, sometimes we break that down to a point, we take a first step, and we actually almost remove that risk because the real heart of the risk is sometimes relatively small. Okay, it's the impact and the scale of the impact of that change is where it is a real struggle. But people say, "Oh wow, the impact will be ABC," and I don't want to move. But if you break it down to, well, I actually need to do A or B, and then if I just do that, that risk will go away. But I don't know that until I actually unpack it a little bit. So it's breaking it down into pieces and then start chipping away and addressing it. It's the same approach. And I tend to take the exact same approach. In delivery, I think on a day-to-day basis, I get this mirage, oh, we're just about to go live with this big new system and we got a big problem. And I will literally ask 4 or 5 questions, and that problem has suddenly become from big to medium to small to, oh, it's not a problem at all. Okay, and it's just asking the right questions and getting to the piece that is effective enough.
Yeah, I'm just going to replay that as in terms of my interpretation.
Yeah.
Because it's all about breaking it down, establishing simple things that could be, the smallest constituent parts. Actually, reminds me of the Einstein. Is it Einstein that says make things as simple as possible, but no simpler? So break things down to the constituent parts. So break down risk. So you can pick one and pick them and remove them. So you're not picking the most risky things. You're picking things so you can establish momentum early. Break down initiatives so you can pick one that can be delivered. And then when you've decided what can be delivered at low risk and what can be delivered, which initiative can be delivered, then take what you need so you can deliver a manageable cost. I mean, I know that's my version of a replay. Was that landing well for you?
Yeah.
Are there any things that should be,
That's
how should
spot
it
on.
be tweaked?
Yeah, and 100%. I think that's exactly the outcome. I mean, you can tweak it in different ways. The way you've interpreted it is just as good as the next one. It's exactly break stuff down, get it to the right place, keep it simple. And that's really the ability to starting something and then building up to get some momentum. Yeah.
And this is going to sound so ridiculous, and it's very personal, but we can delete it out afterwards. My partner's about to move into our house, and she's got a couple of kids. I've got a couple of kids. It's something we've spoken about in the past, as you know. And man, talking about smashing our lives together and where we fit everything, and we were talking about all of this stuff, and we keep going down this path of, well, what ifs and hows and all of these complicated things. And I'm like, what's the absolute priority that you've got to have? And she's like, I just need space to store something, the clothes for the children, so they feel like they've got their own space. And then you go down this path, and then you start redesigning the bedroom. And like, hold on, what are we doing? We said let's just create storage for space for the kids, so they've got their own room. And then, but it's a personal analogy, but it does stand because you know, we're architecting this whole life of years to come and what we're going to do and where we will live, and then it just comes back down to it's only going to cost $2,000 to put cupboards in. Let's just put the cupboards in, and the kids can feel happy, you know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and we were talking about this last night, and I'm not kidding you. I was thinking of you going, let's just pick the cupboards. And then then you start picking on different designs. I'm like, no, we don't need that design of cupboard. We just need a functional, inexpensive cupboard. We're going to IKEA and we're going to get it done. And it's amazing the
I did
difference.
exactly the same thing.
It
So
is, right?
it's exactly that. I did exactly the same thing. And we built a new house, and it was always a challenging. What should we put in the cupboard? Anyway, they built the whole house. They put in cupboards, but yeah, and we decided, we decided, okay, what should we put in there? We weren't quite sure, and then they just put a standard cupboard in, which has just got hanging space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got them. We said, oh, we need shelves and drawers, right? So I said, right, well. So what I did is I went to did I go to IKEA? Yeah, I went to IKEA and I bought a simple set of drawers, 2 set of drawers for each side of each wardrobe, and I put them in. I said, but we need something special. I said, I'll just put them in, and then 6 months from now we can worry about it later. Well, it's 2 years later, we're still using the same set of drawers.
And I bet it does the perfect job, right? You know,
it's a drawer that opens and you put clothes in, you close it.
I do think it's a really interesting analogy for how you simplify things in your own life. Like it's really, and again, not platitudes. It's a real mantra. I really love it. You, I just want to come into something personal for a second. You talk about a focus on momentum. You talk about next best action, tactical actions, but I know you have a strategic vision in mind when you do the things. You don't just forget the vision, right? You're executing tactically what can be done. I've said this to you before. I've never met in Australia, I've never met an unmotivated South African. I've never met one who doesn't want to get things done, who doesn't want to move forward. It feels deeply cultural. Maybe it's just a cross segment that I've met. I don't know. I mean, what's going on with you lot? What's that about? Can I say that even?
Yeah, that's okay. Let me go back and ask them. But anyway,
yeah, that's right.
No, so it's relatively simple. Right? So, and I use this example of me in some ways because it resonated a lot and it made me think double down. Was when we did obviously character review, strengths and weaknesses as part of my tier with my peers, and they said, okay, let's talk about what came out of the survey. And as what came out of the survey, it said Stan's compromising, he's innovating, and he wants to try new things. And then but 2 of them said, but that doesn't make sense because Stan just wants to get stuff done all the time. Okay, so that it sounds like he's more like he's rigid and he's focused. And he says, no, it's not the case. And he went going through. And then I thought quite a lot about that. And it's all cultural. Okay, and so why is that cultural from a South African perspective? It's because in South Africa, there are probably 2 things that stand out the most, but there are more, but just I can put 2 things down. The first thing is straight talk. There's no issue around me telling you, hurry up and move on. Okay, let's get going. Okay, that's actually motivating. Okay, in other cultures, that's criticizing, or that is demanding. But no, South Africa is, come on, we've got to move. Come, you have to go. You have to. Even those words, you have to, you must. Okay, everybody says, okay, that's good. That's energizing. Certainly, I find in Australia, if I say to somebody, you must go now, that's almost like, hold on a second, don't force me to do anything. And the second part of it is in South Africa is that if I don't deliver, somebody else will, and I will lose. There's an energy and a sometimes it may be even an anxiety that I've got to get something done because it's a big it's double or more than double the size of Australian people, and 25% of the country doesn't have a job, and businesses fail every day. So if you're not actually delivering and effectively all the time, you land up losing, or you'll end up losing a job, you'll end up the company fails. So there's this energy always to, I've got to get better, because if I don't, somebody else will be. It's not the same in Australia. Australia are very, very blessed to have the ability to be a very low unemployment, constant growth in business, and there's a slower focus on growth in business, because I know if I work at this over time, I'm going to get a good outcome. Where in South Africa, if I don't fix it today, I might not be here tomorrow. Okay, and it's those two things: a straight talk, and this energy to get something done is just a cultural thing, and that's where what I've realized over time, and I have to in Australia be cautious of that, because if I want to get something done and somebody's saying, well, hold on, you're going too fast, okay, or hold on, you're going too hard, I've got to be able to manage it. I'm very conscious of that, and something I work on quite a lot. And it's something when you know you want to do something, make it a value of yours. So my value is, make sure the people around you are understanding where you're going before you go too fast and go too hard.
Yeah, it really lands. Maybe it's no coincidence then that it seems to be an influx of South Africans into my life who who are either cheering us on or lending me wise words, or I don't know, but that motivation comes through. And I also acknowledge the framing of language and this culture here. I'd go one step further though. I'm finding for me at the moment that it's actually maybe I'm being unfair saying South African. For me, there's probably a group of people who recognize the pace at which I want to work. I have a burning platform, that true burning platform, and I think there's probably a cadre of people around that recognize that, whether they're Australian, South African. There's a few Eastern Europeans appearing in my life at the moment for some reason, but also quite a few French people as well. And the French people seem to be appearing from a deep engineer. They've moved here to Australia, so everyone's here in Australia nowadays. But they've everyone that I'm talking to anyway, and the French are appearing because their deep engineering capability. They're raised on it to get the careers they want in consulting. They often have had to have done a physical engineering or some deep engineering, because they've got that pedigree in France. And that's not to say we don't have it in the rest of the world, because I'm being bombarded by these motivated people saying, come on, you can do it. And so maybe that's why I'm tuning into something that I can't quite put my finger on yet, Stan. I don't know if you have anything prophetic to say around that.
Again, cultural. And you mentioned Eastern European. The Eastern European, and if you talk in the Baltics, you talk about the Hungarians, you talk about the Serbians, you talk about Ukrainians. Very, very straight up in front and direct. Okay. And very strong in their communication, and want to get stuff done. They're very, very similar. So there's a lot of cultural in there. I mean, something that not a lot of people know much. I played a lot of water polo in my previous I want to say previous career was until I was 30, and I travelled around a bit, and obviously the Eastern Europeans are big in water polo. Wow, but you meet them and you get into the pool with them. It's just a different space. It's just direct, hard, fast. Okay, it's just you take a country like which is what, Serbia. I mean, it's tiny. The Serbians, the Montenegro, it's just a tiny organization, tiny. They can be the best in the world at water polo. They're just hard, fast, direct. It's a very strong cultural thing.
Yeah. So you're saying the direct communication style is also reflected in their sporting approach. It's very direct.
Absolutely.
Interesting. I think I once played when I was a schoolboy, a touring South African team in England in rugby, and it was the worst game of my life. I distinctly remember being stretchered off. I think I was terrified about playing anyone from South Africa or New Zealand. Everywhere else in the world, no problem, but just not those two countries, please. one of the things that you and I have talked about is the emergence of business analysts, and we're not alone, right? We have many friends talking to this, but the emergence of business analysts um, into the forefront of the workforce, like an evolution of the role that they currently perform. And I know you've led delivery teams, project teams, business analyst teams. I mean, you've got such a broad remit. But why are people talking about this at the moment? Like, what do you see? What do you see for BAs, and why are they emerging to this? Why is their role emerging at the moment, do you think?
Horrible to say this, but let's go back to the beginning, right, of this conversation. How do we break down a piece of work? How do we break down a risk? How do we analyze where we are? And that's what analysts do best. And what is the thinking pattern to get to a point where we have the right understanding of what to do next? And it doesn't really matter what it is, right? You and I were talking before, is that whether you all in delivery or in security or in architecture, it's the same thing, right? So how do we break down something and get something to the right place to have the right conversation? So for me, there are a few parts of that, and the one part is just the acknowledgement of the industry to say we need the right conversation early in so we don't go down the wrong direction. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is delivery is all about delivery people, and they rush to a delivery manager or a traditional project manager, and they start to push something forward. Where actually you need to pause for a moment and have the conversation. What are we trying to do here before we start thinking about what we're delivering? And it's getting that better. I think the reason why we struggle to get to that point earlier, I think it's about methodologies and very rigid processes. But the other thing really is that business analysts have struggled to find techniques, if that's the right word, or approaches that are, one, consistent, two, simple, and three, get to a point where they are starting to be the catalyst for momentum. Okay. And it's trying to find that. And I'm starting to see that happening more and more now, that the analyst is starting the journey, having the right conversations, and then driving the conversation to the right place. The other thing that I think is something that people tend to forget is that there's if you step back and go back 5 years or maybe even 10 years, you had the enterprise architect that spoke about business architecture and spoke about capabilities. And then the business architects came out of that space and went into the business, and then we talk about business architecture and process architecture. But at the end of the day, it all starts at a capability and ends as a business activity, and that's what we're changing. But we don't need an enterprise architect to tell us how the business runs. We need a business analyst. Okay. And I feel the business analyst capability has been kept in a box a little bit, and breaking down the boundaries and unlocking the potential of analysts. For me, I've seen happen that I don't think we've ever touched the surface of. And if I look at some of the analysts in our organization right now starting to grow, they're all starting to be delivery managers and portfolio managers, but they're using the analytical approach to do that. And I think my personal view is the biggest positive change for delivery over the next 5 years will be in this space.
Wow.
Because I think our software engineers are getting better and better. Our technology is getting better and better. We always know how to find the best, technologists, because there's so much investment in there. But do we start the right thing with the right purpose, with the right objective, with the right goal? And do we know what we're changing, not how we're changing? Because we rush to the how very fast. And if we can do that right, I think we're going to deliver. People will deliver more value. And I think as we see that starting to emerge, I think people will say, "Well, hold on, what's happening there?"
Yeah, I really love it. It feels like a couple of things need to happen there. I mean, just today we delivered a seminar for BAs about accelerated delivery. You know, the Spartan methodology, Andrew's work. So we did that today. It feels like a couple of things need to happen. It feels like business analysts and business analyst leaders need to find their voice and know how to. It also feels like organizations need to give BAs a seat at the table, whether through the leadership or whoever, but find the seat at the table. And I need to, and I got this piece of feedback from, I think it was Michael Agello, actually. Anyway, I don't know if you know Michael, good guy. I think he was saying to me that BAs tend to pocket themselves and developing pockets of functionality as opposed to having the purpose conversation or the goal conversation or the analysis conversation. They're either putting themselves in developing pockets of functionality or being put in that bucket. And so playing it back, it feels like, again, they need to find their voice, but also organizations need to give them a seat to the table. So it's good to hear that you guys are, so you're using them in delivery management, portfolio management, you're using them for their analysis skill sets, right? That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, and the thing that I find, if you want to change mindset, is sometimes you can't just say, "Look at this. This is what you're doing today. This is what you need to do tomorrow," so forth, right? You need to give them a pattern to work towards. You need to give them something. So we have a set of techniques to help them get there. And we just use a set of two techniques that we've blended together that starts to get them thinking about purpose, objectives, goals, what's changing and why is it changing. You know, the why and the what, more focused around the why and the what, and don't move out of the why and the what until you really got a good answer. It is a risk, I will tell you that, because most businesses love to say, "I know what I want and I know the solution, let's go." And then often you want to say, "Stop, let's have the conversation first." And it was quite interesting because I was talking to one of my peers in the business. I said, "Talk to me about the process." He said, "Yeah, we always find we've got to fill the form in to get going." And I'm saying, "The form?" So I said, "Have you read the form?" So they said, "No." I said, "It's a canvas that asks you why you're doing it and what do you want to do." So it's not a form. It's trying to get you to think differently or think, make sure you. So that's what people who want an outcome tend to get. I've got a lot of forms to fill in to make sure people can start delivering my solution. But actually, the whole idea of what we're trying to get them to do is just the canvas asks you why you want to do this. What's the opportunity? What's the problem? Okay, and what's the impact and the benefit and the dependencies? Talk to me about those things before okay, we dive off and start delivering some outcomes. And it is a challenge. And you know, I've been challenged in a lot of ways in many organizations. Is it slowing us down? Or I've done this before. I can promise you, if business analysts do this right, your feedback will be, are they stopping and they're regurgitating all the stuff that I've told everybody already? Well, have you written it? Does everybody know about it? Okay. Well, the business analyst asks you a question because it's missing. Okay. So it's a problem. But I believe that there are lightweight techniques to get us to those outcomes really quickly today. Okay, which I don't think already have been available in the past.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to replay something. I think of what I've heard. You're telling me that that some organizations can resist because they feel that the BAs are just regurgitating what they've been told, but that's a necessary part of the process because it breeds clear alignment on what the outcomes are, why they're doing, and what they want done. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what organizations, BAs, what the world needs is lightweight frameworks which are simple, not arduous to go through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that really lands me, really resonates.
Yeah, and so part of what we try to equip the analyst with is what we call elicitation, which says don't forcing regurgitation. Go and read all the documents before you walk in the room, and come onto the table with a draft outcome. Not a draft outcome as the solution. Draft outcome is there's a business need. So when you start to have the conversation, the business doesn't feel like you're regurgitating it. They feel like you've tried to understand it, and all you're doing now is validating your understanding. So we try to do that, but in some situations it's not available because people have spoken about it but documented nothing or said nothing. So it's trying to, that elicitation is grab everything you can to start the journey, and going back to the beginning, how to start, right? Okay, just start. Put it on a piece of paper. If your executive walks in or your stakeholder walks in and says, that's not right, and you said, okay, well, tell me what's wrong. Okay, that's how the conversation kicks off. Rather than saying, please, can you tell me everything about this? What you're doing is he's coming in and saying, well, what you've got on the table is wrong. You say, oh, wow, sorry, I misunderstood it. Tell me about it. That's a very, very different approach. You're doing the exact same thing, just a different approach to get the conversation going.
And all that happens before you've even started costing out the how you would even arrive at that particular benefit. As a delivery person that assesses these things, what's your favorite benefit to see? You know, efficiency, cost out, growth. I mean, what like is it? Do you have a favorite that you like to see? Do you think is the right starting point that normally gets sponsorship, or am I am I trying to game this too much?
No, look, I think at the end of the day, it's all, if you have a clear purpose, and that's what we always talk. What's the clear purpose, and what's changing, and then what is, you know, do I go to the problem I'm solving or the benefit I'm creating, whatever? But at the end of the day, what am I going to get out of this? Okay. So what's the value? Okay. And it's something that we all struggle with. Absolutely, we all struggle with this, but there is a way to, what's my purpose, what's the problem, then what's the benefit of a change, and what am I changing? And if you got that stuff, you are in a better place than anybody else would be. And the traceability back to that all the time is really important. And I think that's what people tend to forget, is that as you progress through a delivery life cycle, have you checked that you're still hitting the same purpose, hitting the same benefit, and again, there are more lightweight techniques emerging that allow us to do that. Allow us to push us down a direction. It was quite interesting. We were using a bit of technique, and somebody says, well, this is not really helping me. So I said, why? He says, because it's constrained my thinking. So I said, okay, explain that to me. So it said, I've unpacked this, and you said you got, let's just say it's unpacked these 4 boxes of capabilities or business activities, but I've got a 5th one. Oh, okay. So how does it meet the purpose? Well, it doesn't really, but I still want to do that 5th one. So I said, well, but it doesn't meet the purpose. So what's the point of doing it? Okay. So they said, and then it was like, you know, aha moment for this person. Oh, okay. Okay. I said, if it doesn't meet the purpose, then why are you doing it at all? Okay. And these techniques, while they sometimes constrain, they make sure people are keeping that thinking process. And then they said, well, actually, there's a benefit for that other piece. And I said, well, then it's another piece of work. So let's separate these 2 pieces of work. It's not one piece of work. And again, you know, kudos to Thunder Labs. You guys do that well. What is don't bundle pieces of work together. Keep them separate and deliver the individual outcomes.
Yeah, I was chatting to another CIO recently, actually. One of these that hasn't been released yet, and we were talking about the temptation to roll expected benefits or outcomes into one program of work, so you get funding for the one that you really want, whilst delivering something that's got, you know, has got it's a pet project, or it's got stakeholder weighting in terms of importance of it, whatever. But as an executive, that this is the one that we really need to deliver benefits. It's quite complicated, isn't it?
Yeah,
We've covered off a lot, Stan. I have just a couple more things. We've covered momentum, we've covered benefits, we've covered costs, we've covered motivation, we've covered the South Africans, we've talked about the emergent role of business analysts. And there's many more things that I think that we can cover. I think I might, I'm mindful of time because we're approaching the sort of hour. And the last thing I'll say is I really love the work that Cochlear do. I mean, I spent 5 years before this in my own med tech company before me launching Thunder Labs, as you know, and I couldn't be prouder to have the team on site and work alongside your forward thinkingness. It's a dream customer, really, in many respects. Not without challenges, of course. I mean, I wouldn't want to, again, no platitudes, of course, but I know the guys enjoy it. So my question goes now back to you about us. If you were to give me advice, Ash and all the rest of my company who are listening to this, about building something that, I've always believed in building an organization that creates freedom for our own employees, for our customers, a place of safety, to experiment, to fail, to succeed. Freedom is the call sign. You would have heard me talk about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, to achieve freedom. But we're only 2 years in. We're not out of the woods, and I'm interested in advice. I want to know how to get this done. I want to know how to build a place where people flock to join or to do work with. So what advice do you have for me as a business, Stan Belikoff?
Yeah. Look, for me, leadership is always the people don't lead companies, they lead leaders, and people are flocked to leaders. And I think we talk back about, as I say, I've spent a lot of time really unpacking what does leadership actually mean. And I really back in my career was so you're achieving this, achieving that, but you're not influential enough. What does that mean? Oh, leadership. Okay. And unpacking all aspects of leadership. And yeah, as I say, what I identified was, those three things: invest, build those trusting, psychologically safe, vulnerable, authentic relationships in your organization to deliver things together, which is all about momentum. Okay, and celebrate that stuff together, and understand that joint purpose. And what's the joint purpose? Know what my role is in an organization, and then build that momentum, and then ultimately invest in the people. And for me, if we do those things, it always pays off. And I'm not joking. Always, every time I've done that properly and invested in that, it's always paid off. And without pointing each organization that I've done specifically, in all those organizations that I've done this properly in, I've lost very little talent. Okay. In organizations that I rushed into, didn't have time to do that properly, and it was, I got outcomes. Okay.
Yeah.
But not sustainability. Sustainability. So I'll always resonate back to great leadership is always going to give you the best outcome. That's the one thing. The other thing is building that. I don't know if the right word is building that mantra of delivering, taking ownership of delivery, coming in, more cost effective than other organizations, and being proud of your outcomes. And I think that's what Thunder Lab does. Okay. And I need to, and I need to. I'd love to see more of that, to be honest, inside Cochlear. Okay, and part of leveraging and working with you is to try get there. Okay, inside Cochlear is being proud of how we do things, how we get outcomes, how we deliver value to the business, and I think staying true to your values is. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy at all. Okay, so putting on my power. Okay.
Sorry.
I know it's not easy, but sticking to it. If you're seeing momentum, just gonna, because I think if your organization continues to grow and you are delivering value to organizations based on the way you believe it is and the way you do, I just can't see your organization not doing well. Finding the in an organization, because organizations are not used to that type of engagement, is always going to be your challenge. And that's pretty normal, because you're doing something different. And the more and more people have these conversations and share what that difference is actually just really good basics. Because what you're doing is basics, okay? Because the world has got out of control in terms of all these fancy things to do things, but you're going back to the basics. Let's have a conversation and talk about your problem. Okay, understand your problem, and understand what's the quickest way to give you an early outcome. That's just unique in the industry, and I think we need a lot more Thunder Labs, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I hope that happens too. Yeah, I got it. You said invest in people and it pays off. Build it sustainably with outcomes in mind, like the Helix, basically. Keep an eye for delivery and cost effectiveness. That's definitely going in the memory bank somewhere. And keep investing in the concept of arriving at early value. Yeah. I got it.
I think arriving at early value is always going to. If you got the people and you're building momentum as an organization with the right people, with the right investment in people, and you're delivering early value in customers, that's a really good differentiator.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the thoughts there. There is one final observation. I noted that when I think about your organization, Cochlear, I think people are quite very proud of actually what you do as an organization. It's very meaningful, very impactful. I think there's good brand and there's good reputation, and I know our engineers want to be there. They want to do the work with you guys because of it, and I think it's probably a good moment to applaud you and the leadership that the guys deal with. That even considering doing things a different way is a step in the right direction, even imperfect. As you know, I'm a huge fan of James Clear, and better progress over perfection. And I sense that in your place, and I wish you well for it. And again, I know many of my team like the work that they do. I think they're proud of the association with the work of Cochlear, and so. I guess that's thanks for being here and giving me your time, but also for the continued thoughts. I need to take some moments now, journal this, and turn it into something that helps me along the way for the next adventure, Stan. So, if there's nothing else from you, I might press pause here, and then.
I just want to say it is a privilege to have this conversation with you guys, with you specifically, Chris, and Andrew and the team. I think it's a privilege.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Gratitude, my friend.